Hello, my name is Orly Meyer, and welcome to CultureCast. In this episode, we will be talking about El Callejon de los Milagros, the film adaptation of Midaq Alley. We are here today with Alex, Peter, and Colton, who are film critics and are here to talk a little about this great film that everyone has been talking about. I am glad you guys can be here with us today, so let's get started by talking about author and producer of this amazing film, Alex.
Hello, Orly. The film was made by Jorge Fons. He was born on April 23, 1939 in Tuxpan, Veracruz, Mexico.
Did you know he studied film production in the University Center of Film Studies at the National Autonomous University of Mexico?
Why, yes, I did. He was also among the first generation of Mexican filmmakers and started with short films and commercials, though he had a period of standstill due to political setbacks in Mexico. But then he came back to make successful films such as Midaq Alley in 1995.
So tell me a little about the characters in the film.
Well, Rutilio is the owner of the cantina where most of the men in the story gather to drink and play dominoes. Doña Cata is Alma's mom, and she also reads cards and has bad luck with love. Alma is the beautiful girl of the neighborhood who dreams of wealth and luxury. Abel is in love with Alma, and he goes to the United States to make more money to be able to marry Alma. But at the end of the film, he is stabbed to death by the whorehouse. Eusebia is Rutilio's wife, always searching for his love. Susanita is the owner of the apartment complex where Alma and many of the other characters live. And don't forget, she also dreams of passion and love. Don Fidel is Rutilio's friend who Alma is going to marry, but ends up dying from a heart attack. Alma's mother was originally interested in him, which is very ironic. Chava is Rutilio's son who wants to go to America to make his fortune. Jose Luis is the man who introduces Alma to the prostitution life. Ubaldo is the poet/philosopher. Jimmy is Rutilio's lover and almost dies after Chava bashes his head in the sauna. Tina is Chava's wife, who he finds in America. Maru is Alma's friend. Zacharias is the king of the beggars and lusts after Doña Flor. Guido works in the cantina and marries Susanita and steals from her. Doña Flor abuses her husband and is the owner of the butcheria. And Macario is Doña Flor's husband and is abused by Doña Flor.
What do you guys think about the plot and how does it develop?
It's an adaptation from the novel Midaq Alley by Naguib Mufaz. The film has 3 overlapping stories, Rutilio, Alma, and Susanita. It's about how their life intertwined and how they affect each other. In Rutilio's story, we see his relationship with his wife and son and what he wants in his interest in men. In Alma's story, we see her innocence and beauty and what she wants out of her life and how she wants wealth and luxury and what she does to obtain both. In Susanita's story, we see her dreams of passion and being in love, and once she gets married, we see that she struggles since her husband steals from her. At the end of the story, it turns out no one gets what they want.
The movie shows a sense of community. What are your intakes about it?
Everyone in the film knows each other, and their lives are intertwined at some point throughout the movie. They all affect each other. They all live on the same street and go to the same places mostly every day. You can see the community through the 3 different stories that are told in the film.
So tell me a little about some of the Aaronic moments in the movie, Peter.
Well, I'm glad you asked me about that. There are a couple of ironic moments in the movie. The first is when Jose Luis, the pimp, takes Alma home with him. She hears some noise and decides to look out the door only to find she's in a whorehouse. She becomes very upset and wants to leave. Upon her exit, Jose Luis tells her she'll be back and her response is, "Never!" She quickly returns to the whorehouse in pursuit of wealth and moving up in the world, but soon learns that she has been duped and is pretty much a slave to Jose Luis. Another example of irony is when Mr. Rue disowns his only son, Chava, after he runs away to the U.S. Upon his return, Chava tries to rekindle the relationship, to which Mr. Rue still has not forgiven him. It's only after he realizes that that Chava has named his son after his father, that he decides to accept him again. Lastly, at the end, Chava leaves the alley. He escapes to the U.S., but only for a couple years. He runs out of money pretty quickly, and decides to try and make a living near the border, but that doesn't work out either. Eventually, he returns to the alley and is in the same situation as when he left, except now he has a baby and a wife to feed.
That was very interesting. So, what can you tell me about some of the themes of the movie?
There are a couple of themes that stuck out in my mind. Some of them were similar to the book, but some of them different because of the change of location and just the general plot. One of the major themes that stuck out in my mind was the concept of love and marriage. Abel escapes to the U.S. with the hopes of making enough money to come back and marry Alma. It is obvious he is very much in love with her, and she seems to be in love with him, but she doesn't end up waiting for him, and he returns heartbroken. The next theme is the concept of upward mobility. Chava and Abel run off to the U.S. in order to make money. Alma becomes a prostitute in order to make money herself. Everyone in the alley has money problems, and it seems for the most part that's the only thing they want. People aren't happy with what they have and are constantly focusing on the things that they think they need. Finally, the idea of the gender roles and who's in control. Mr. Rue and his wife have a terrible relationship. Mr. Rue is very disrespectful and beats his wife often and often berates her and is constantly annoyed with her. He also cheats on her with younger boys, but they continue to stay married. He is clearly the one with the power. She has absolutely no say and just goes along with it. On the other hand, there's Guido and Susanita. They quickly fall in love, but after Susanita finds out that Guido has been stealing from her since they've been married, it is her who's in control. Guido becomes very upset and begs Susanita not to leave him. It's clear that she is the one with the power and he is the one who is helpless. It's interesting to see how some couples have the male in charge while the others, the female, is the alpha.
So given what you just told me, what would you say is the overall tone of the film? It's
definitely a very dramatic movie. There are ups and downs and funny moments and very serious moments. The scene where Mr. Rue and Jimmy are in the shower is a little uncomfortable, not just because of the fact you see two fully nude grown men frolicking, but Chava enters and almost kills Jimmy after banging his head off the wall. It's a pretty intense scene that I just really wasn't expecting. There's also the ending of the film where Abel gets stabbed multiple times and dies in Alma's arms. Even though Abel doesn't live, you can tell that if he had to choose, he would want to die with Alma by his side. Some of the lighter moments take place in the cafe Mr. Rue owns. There are a group of men playing dominoes, joking around, having a good time, often making fun of each other. In a lower-class neighborhood, relationships are so important because they don't have a whole lot to live for. Also, Chava and Abel also like to smoke weed often, probably as an escape to forget about where they live and how unhappy they are.
So what will you say are some of the major differences from the novel?
There are quite a few differences in the film that don't make a huge impact on the plot, such as the occupations of many of the main characters, which are slightly different. One thing that is pretty different is the fact that Alma is accepting of Abel from the beginning. She does not reject him as she does in the book. She is only cautious because of her mother. Another thing that is different is that Chava attacks his father's lover and almost kills him. This does not happen in the novel and changes the plot of the story slightly. The biggest change, I would say, is at the end of the movie. Abel attacks the pimp and not Alma. This is a big difference because it changes the way we look at Alma in the end. Abel still loves Alma and wants to be with her in the afterlife. However, in the novel, he hates her for what she has done and messes up her face to get back at her. The film preserves Alma's innocence and really changes the way we view one of the main characters, which is why I would say that the film is a fairly loose adaptation of the novel.
What about the morals in the film? Are there issues that arise that question the characters' morals?
Sure. There are several big moral questions, such as Alma promising Abel she will wait for him, yet she decides to go after other men. There's also the issue of how she is arranged to marry Don Fidel, which her mother was in love with, and also the fact that she is willing to become a prostitute in order to leave the alley. These issues really make us question the character of Alma.
How will you say the narrator tells his tragic tale of life in the alley?
Well, Orly, we find ourselves watching the same story 3 different times through 3 different eyes. At first, Rutilio's viewpoint is shown as we see him struggle with his marriage, sexuality, and role in both society and the alley. Then we see Alma's burning desires for something greater, although we find her looking in all the wrong places. Finally, we see Susanita's passive life and her search for passion.
About how long did these stories take place?
Well, because we see the same story over and over again, it may seem like a longer time period, but these simultaneous events probably happen over a span of about 2 to 3 years.
And what motifs and symbols do we see repeated in these stories?
We see sacrifice in Abel leaving for the U.S. to make money so he can return and marry Alma. We see Alma sacrifice her chance at love and happiness for the luxury she'll find in a life with Jose Luis.
In the movie, how does the use of space and the setting affect the story?
We see the same shots used: the stairwell leading up to the apartment quad, the balcony that Alma dries her hair on, the cantina where the townspeople drink and gamble. These close-up and repeated shots make the alley seem claustrophobic and crowded. This shows the lack of freedom, pace, and luxury in the alley.
Well, thank you for joining us today on this episode of CultureCast, where we discussed the film adaptation of Midaq Alley, El Callejon de los Milagros. Until next time!